Welcome to the Black Gay History Channel. Please share this video and subscribe to this channel for more captivating content. Pixote is the 1981 film about a young Brazilian boy who grows up in the Brazilian detention system in the city streets, leading a hard life among the other queer, gay, and LGBTQ kids on the hard streets of Brazil's favelas. This movie was gut-wrenching to watch, but it is still considered one of the best classic films in Brazil's cinematic history. Whew, this film was hard to watch, but it's compelling because I know that these hard stories that this young boy, Pixote, experienced are incredibly accurate. As someone who has been in homeless shelters and other abusive environments, I know that all these scenarios are incredibly realistic, even if it's hard to believe such a young kid could experience all this trauma. But films like this surely helped a lot of Brazilian people come to terms that their country need more social support for low-income families and the LGBTQ community. In Latin America, Brazil is seen as one of the leaders of LGBTQ rights, and I'm certain raw films like this help to educate the public on the needs of gay and trans kids too. Now, admittedly, I didn't even grasp the full gravity of this film because the version I watched didn't have a translation for Portuguese, but I saw more than enough. In the beginning of the film, Pixote is being entered into a boys' juvenile detention center, and from the beginning it's clear that he isn't safe. On one of his first nights there, he witnesses a young black boy being held down and essayed by a group of older teenagers in the dorms. I can't help but feel that the warden of the detention center knew what would happen because as soon as his shadow disappeared from behind the window, the boys attacked. The next day, the warden scolded the room of boys asking who did it. But again, I couldn't help but feel it was all for show to pretend like he cared about what happened. Even in the showers, Pixote isn't safe. The older boy is clearly making sexual jokes and looking at Pixote like fresh meat. In another troubling scene, Pixote and his new friend witness a young trans woman named Lilica being forced to dance in her underwear for a bunch of older men, showing Pixote and the viewer that many of these young inmates are being used and abused by the men that work there. In another terrible scene, as punishment for whatever, Pixote and a bunch of other boys are stripped and forced into a dark concrete closet. Some of the students who get mouthy are rounded up and literally gunned down in the forest. And Lilica's boyfriend, a young black kid in the detention center, is beaten to death and thrown back into the dormitory where Lilica cries her eyes out. A group of boys help Lilica escape, and Pixote and the rest of his friends are sadly safer on the streets than they were in the detention center, where they should have been protected. But now these kids have to survive to eat, so they turn to robbing people in the streets. But they eventually find their way into the drug trade. Lilica finds her young friends, but this time she's with her older lover named Cristal, a much older black man who offers them weed and a place to stay. But of course, I knew things couldn't be that easy because a man trying to be around all them kids can't be a good thing. When they are at his place, he starts showing them adult films, another massive, huge red flag. And before you know it, he's trying to engage with Lilica's other boyfriend, Dito. And Dito was not feeling it. So they again have to find another place to stay. It's clear that all the adults who find these kids have no intention of genuinely helping them, and that all the adults they encounter are just trying to exploit them in some way. Pixote, Lilica, and Dito encounter women of the night who they begin to sell drugs for and rob their johns for cash. But again, it's the same cycle of selfish adults exploiting these young people. Pixote is rough to watch, but it's a harsh reminder that many people are still living all around the world experiencing exploitation and abuse, and that includes young gay, bisexual, and trans kids who are at the mercy of the system and a lack of support. Despite the traumatic events, this film is groundbreaking for its portrayal of young gay, bisexual, and trans people who likely had no voice or visibility in the 1980s Brazilian culture and media. And this film finally gave them a voice. All around the world, from here in Canada to Brazil, we need to be thinking of ways to create safer communities for our most vulnerable community members, where gay and trans kids can find a safe way out of the street life. Have you all heard or seen of this iconic Brazilian film, Pixote? Sound off in the comments.